Okay, let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Historic Resources Commission. I'm Joy Coleman, the chair, and it is February 15th, the third Thursday of the month. So here we are with a good-sized agenda tonight. Avery, would you like to give the preliminary meeting info?
Yes, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the February 15th Historic Resources Commission meeting. My name is Avery Kerner, and with me is Lynn Braddock-Zollner, the Historic Resources Administrator, and Becky Pepper, the Planning Manager. And together we will help work alongside the chair to facilitate the meeting proceedings this evening. Before we begin, I have just a few reminders to share. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. For those who are attending the meeting virtually, please remember to mute yourself when you are not actively speaking to help minimize distractions. When the chair calls for public comment on an item, anyone attending in person may walk to the podium to speak. If you are attending the meeting virtually and would like to provide public comment on an item, please use the raise your hand feature to be called upon. We also ask that everyone state their name before they speak to ensure that everyone is able to follow along. And with that, I'll turn the meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you, Avery. We have a small change to the agenda tonight. We're going to move item number 2 under the public hearing items, which is DR 23-00444, to be the first public hearing item tonight instead of the second. Okay. So item A, communications. Have we received communications from other commissions, State Historic Preservation Officer, or the general public?
This is Avery Kerner, planning staff. We do not have any communications.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have disclosures to make, ex parte communications, declarations of abstentions from specific agenda items? No, thank you. Oh, we do need to take roll. Thank you, Commissioner Ezell. We'll take a roll call. Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Klein, present.
Commissioner Hawley.
Commissioner Hawley, present.
Commissioner Ezell.
Commissioner Ezell here.
Commissioner Meyer.
Commissioner Meyer here.
Commissioner Johnston.
Commissioner Johnson here.
And Chair Coleman is here. Now moving on to the consent agenda.
Chairman Coleman, I believe Commissioner Haynes is present now.
Oh, wonderful. Commissioner Haynes. Roll
I
call.
apologize for being late.
Thank you.
Do we have committee reports?
No. Oh, I didn't ask for that, did I? I'm all jumbled up. This is quite the audience tonight. Do we have any committee reports this month, Avery?
No, there are no committee reports.
Well, and since I was the Historic Resources Commission's, this is Commissioner Johnson, representative on the Lawrence Loop Task Force. And that task force may be going away for a little while. The proposal just recently went to the City Commission for applying for a grant to build a bridge across the river, pedestrian bicycle bridge, and a way over the railroad tracks. And I just wanted to report on that. The last meeting of the task force, the majority of the task force recommended that the city go for the grant, but the big issue for a couple of people was that in the end, it didn't close the loop. And so I just wanted to report back on that since I was representing you there.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Moving on to item B, the consent agenda. We have minutes and administrative approvals. Is there any discussion, or would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
And I'll second. And we'll take a vote here. Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Meyer?
Commissioner Meyer, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. At this time, we'll take public comment regarding any items that are not on the agenda. Is there any such comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the first item on the list, which was listed as the second item, DR 23-00444.
I'm going to erase this just a little bit real quick. Okay. Okay, and Kurt, I'm sorry, but I don't have Zoom pulled up on the podium, I don't think. Would you mind helping me share the presentation slides?
Oh my, I don't have volume to Zoom. Okay, hold on, just take a second.
I apologize.
Oopsie.
I can try and get it pulled up too if you want me to, that might be easier.
Oh, you better hit .org at the top.
Oh, thank you.
All right, looking good. That's gonna work.
Okay. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Share the screen again. Okay. So good evening, Commissioners. This is item DR-23-00444. And with this application, the applicant is requesting to demolish portions of the existing structure at 1332 Kentucky Street and to construct new additions to the existing structure. The subject property is located in the Oriad Neighborhood Design Overlay District, and the proposed project is subject to the neighborhood-wide design guidelines. This is a map showing the location of the subject property at 1332 Kentucky Street within the Oriad Design Overlay District. The existing structure at 1332 Kentucky Street is a two-story dwelling with a stone foundation and crawl space. The rear portion of the structure is only 1 story, and then there's a single-story addition on the south side of the structure. The applicant is requesting to demolish the 2 single-story portions of the structure, as well as the stone foundation of the original structure. The stone foundation would be replaced with a cast-in-place footing and foundation wall to allow for a full basement. A new single-story addition would be constructed on the south side of the structure, and a 2-story addition would be constructed to the rear on the east elevation. On screen is a photograph showing the southwest corner of the existing structure on the property. The structure's west elevation with the front porch faces Kentucky Street, and then this portion of the structure on the south side is the single-story south addition that the applicant is requesting to demolish. If we walk around the property, this would be looking at the northwest corner of the structure. Here you can see a little bit of the single-story structure at the rear of the property, or at the rear of the structure that would be included in the demolition request. And then this is the east elevation of the structure, which better shows the rear portion of the structure that the applicant is requesting to demolish. You can also see the stone foundation of the original structure. And then this is looking at the southeast elevation, and again, you can see the single-story south addition on the south side of the structure from the opposite direction from where we started, and that would be included in the demolition. This would be the proposed site plan for the property. The red outline shows the footprint of the portions of the structure that would be demolished. And then the hatched and then cross-hatched areas shown would be the footprint of the new additions. This would be the front west elevation of the structure with the proposed addition. The addition would be clad with fiber cement lap siding, and composite fiber trim would be used at the corners and around windows. The exterior of the foundation wall would be clad with stone veneer, and composite shingles would be used on the roof. All windows in the existing structure would be replaced with new single-hung Anderson 100 series windows. Those windows would also be used on the new addition. The two-story addition would be slightly taller than the existing structure and would add around 19 feet to the overall width of the structure visible from the public right-of-way. And I'll just walk through the other elevations that are submitted. This would be the north elevation showing the proposed addition to the rear of the existing structure. This would be the rear east elevation visible from the alley. And then this would be the south elevation. The applicant also provided renderings of the proposed additions. So the northeast view would be looking at the back of the proposed addition on the north side, and then the northwest view looking towards the addition from the front. And then again, the southeast view would be looking towards the new addition from the rear of the property, and then the southwest view would be looking towards the addition from the front. The subject property is not a listed property, and it's not identified as a contributing structure to the Oread Neighborhood Design Overlay District. However, the original portion of the structure is older than 50 years old and does possess character-defining features, like the stone foundation. For demolition of existing structures, a structural analysis and a repair versus replacement cost analysis is requested to determine the extent of the damage of a structure. The applicant has supplied this documentation, which is included in your packet this evening. That documentation states that the structure shows signs of settling and cracking, as well as water intrusion, which has caused wood rot that's compromised the stability of the structure. Overall, staff is of the opinion that the overall size and massing of the proposed addition is not compatible with the size of the existing structure. Therefore, the proposed project does not meet many of the applicable guidelines found within the Oread design guidelines. Staff is of the opinion that the proposed demolition work may be supportable if compatible replacement plans for the additions are proposed, and would recommend that the project be forwarded to the ARC. And with that, I'd be happy to help answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Avery before we move on to the applicant?
I do have a brief question for Avery. Avery, so with the recommendation of it going to ARC, because usually the ARC is at tweak level and not wholesale redesign level, do you think that's a reasonable possibility given staff's assessment of the overall massing?
I think that would be a good question for the applicant to see if they would be open to significant design alterations that would reduce the overall massing of the addition. The applicant has submitted some revisions in response to staff's review and comments regarding some of the design guidelines that weren't met by the original submittal. Those didn't necessarily address the overall massing and size of the addition. those changes or revisions have been included in the packet for your review as well. But yeah, I would maybe defer to the applicant to see if that was something that they would be open to.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? And would you like to say anything?
Hello, I'm I'm Jared Hoke of Hokeley Architects. I'm here from Art Kern. Questions first, or just would you like me to?
Oh, yeah, if you have a presentation prepared or
Yeah.
or something prepared that you'd like to state, yes, please, we'd like to hear it.
Yeah, and it's kind of in response to the the massing topic and our approach towards creating this design proposal. Looking at the site plan, the existing house isn't parallel to the property line. It basically is pinned at the northeast corner of the two-story structure. It's pinned at the side setback. Our first analysis was to try to extend the original two-story mass to the east. In doing so, we would create a non-compliant condition. We would encroach into our required side yard. The same holds true with the existing, possibly original one-story structure to the east. That is already encroaching into the required side setback. We have no ability to do a second-story addition to that portion, reuse those foundations, or basically do an addition in the basement area and build up on top with, new structural walls that go from roof to the basement. Our next analysis was to look at how to create an addition to meet the client's needs that also would be comparable and compatible with what the existing conditions were. The existing house is 16'4" wide. We have one wing of our house which is 14 feet wide. That is the portion that has a roof that is taller than the original roof. The reason for that is that the original structure has a sidewall head height of under 6 feet. So we're trying to create a space that is narrower than the existing space in order to gain some usable clearance of head height in the newer rooms of the addition. So the main portion, like I said, the main north-south wing for that addition, that's 14 feet wide, which is narrower than the original two-story. On the rear of the house, the east side of the house, we went ahead and matched the 16'4" wide of the existing. In our opinion, the difference in head height when viewing, the difference in roof height when viewing from the street level and the sidewalk level is imperceptible. I would like to think that the renderings would show that, but we're talking about perhaps a foot of difference between the two, which, because we created a break between the new and the existing, there is no linkage between the two roofs, and you cannot tell that there is a difference in ridge line. The ridge lines never intersect with each other because of that break. Also speaking about the southern addition, the existing portion of one story that I think was we're describing it as an addition to the original house. That portion encroaches on the window trim detailing of the southwest window, kind of taking away from that character. So one of the reasons why we're taking away that portion of the existing structure is to give some breathing room and allow the original historic features of the existing two-story house to really be able to be displayed. It also doesn't have a stone foundation. It has a concrete crawl space foundation, so we would still have to go back and do work to make that appear as stone anyway. So we felt that that one-story area that we're proposing to demolish, because it's not original and because it has these other deficiencies that affect and impact the existing two-story, would be something that should be considered as being a demolition-worthy part of the project. And that's all I have right now.
So the foundation under the part of the house, the original house that is being kept, is that foundation being replaced? Or-
Yeah, we'll raise the house up, steel beams, cribbing, and then put a new foundation, concrete wall foundation with full stone cladding on all portions of the, existing house that we keep, and on all new portions of the addition.
This is Commissioner Meyer. Were you asked to provide more documentation regarding the damage in your request for demolition?
Avery, was that in? No.
I'm just curious, the Register of Deeds, or Douglas County, I should say, indicates that the owners owned it for maybe like 12 years. Do you think that's right?
Yeah, that could be right, yeah.
So I think that for me, one of the things that is concerning is when you have a longtime owner who comes in and the structural analysis shows things that clearly they haven't taken care of the property, like roof exceeding its use life. I'm just curious why a roof hasn't been replaced in all that time, or are we talking about window intrusion because things haven't been taken care of?
Klein.
I did a little history. I noted in the report, according to that the building the existing structure was constructed in 1920.
Or the south?
No, I was only looking at newspaper ads for 1332 Kentucky. So there's nothing, there were no news items that talked about the foundation or the building itself. So we don't know. I'm just saying that people were living on that property
Yeah,
earlier than 1905.
okay. I think this is a tough one.
Yeah.
This is a tough one because the new addition is so much larger than the part of the structure that is being kept. And to complicate it even more, it's on Kentucky Street where a lot of the original homes, the older homes, have been lost, and apartment buildings have been replacing them over the years. So, do you argue that because so much has been lost, we shouldn't lose any more? Or do you go the other way and say this, one is not as important as, all that? So, I don't know. Yeah, I think we should take some public comment and then we'll have more discussion. But thank you for your.
Can I just make one last, I would respond in argument saying that from a scale and proportion and massing standpoint, that the addition is more compatible to the existing house than what was built directly across the street. And if we're going to speak about, the historic nature and compatibilities of moving forward with historic structures, so.
Point taken.
Thank you.
Well, this is Commissioner Johnson. I have one more question. You see that staff is recommending that we send this to the Architecture Review Committee. If we were to do that, what is your understanding of what could possibly be done to make this structure meet more of the guidelines?
Well, my understanding of the ARC is that it's a path to tweak the design or tweak a design in order to better meet the guidelines. I have ideas of how we could reduce the height. We could definitely lower the spring point of the roof and have that be at 6 feet to match the existing house, or 6 feet or 7 feet. There is also a potential that we could remove the second story of the addition and move that all into a basement, because right now that is proposed as a slab on grade construction. So that would not reduce the overall square footage, but it definitely would reduce the height, bulk, and scale of the proposal.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item? Okay. I'm seeing no public comment. So let's have some discussion. I'm happy to send the project to ARC to talk about those tweaks. But I'm not comfortable with sending it to ARC for a large redesign or a rethinking of the entire project.
This is Chair Meyer. Looking at the staff report, there's really kind of 3 areas with a lot of where it does not meet the guidelines. I mean, one is, generally speaking, related to demolition or removal of features or structures. So there's that issue. That's something that isn't going to be resolved by the ARC, probably. I would say not. The other things related to massing could potentially be done, the ARC, depending on exactly how much that would entail. And then the other things I would think are things that I think are generally ARC topics, which are, there's a lot related to the windows on the project, a little bit about the materials on the project, things related to the porch project. So I don't have any objection sending it to the ARC, but in terms of those, what I would categorize as those 3 categories, some of that is maybe not so much wiggle room. So Lynn, I guess a question for you perhaps is, in terms of the demolition, I mean, you recommended that it go to the ARC for some of this. I assume that if the recommendation is it goes to the ARC, that the fact that some of that may be demolished could be appropriate.
I think that's a discussion that the Historic Resources Commission would have to have before sending it to the ARC, whether or not it's appropriate to demolish that section of the structure. It may be that if the design is more compatible, it would negate some of the issues with demolishing the historic portion of the structure. So I think you would want to have that conversation this evening about whether or not you're willing to entertain the demolition of that portion of the structure and direct the ARC to move forward with a design for those other issues, or if you're not thinking it's appropriate to demolish that portion of the structure, then it wouldn't really be necessary to move it forward to the ARC for further design options.
Commissioner Holly, I'll just say, I think if this were sent to the ARC, I would be comfortable with the demolition myself, but I want to hear what the other, to echo your point, I want to hear what the other commissioners have, because I don't want to send it to ARC if there are objections where it doesn't have a chance on coming back. The demolition and the basic overall massing seem like fundamental issues that if we have a not necessarily a vote, but a consensus of these are acceptable, then I think ARC could serve to do some good fine tuning. I just want to make sure that everyone's okay with the general direction so we don't spin a review process that's unnecessary.
This is Commissioner Klein. I don't recall seeing a structural analysis and the cost of replacement. Was that something that was or was not submitted before or after the staff report?
That information was submitted during the review and was referenced in the staff report. I'd have to look to see where exactly in the application packet that was.
Page, this is Commissioner Meyer. I think it's on, of your packet, it starts on page 46. It's page 46 and page 46 through 48. I mean, it's quite frankly not a very long analysis. I mean, it looks like a letter. And it's got some basic cost information.
Okay, well, can you just let us know what the cost of repairing the foundation and the cost of replacing it would amount to?
This is Chair Meyer again. It's not that specific. It basically says repair cost per square foot, $300, new construction cost per square foot, $200, and then basically takes it by the square feet. So the repair cost would be $82,000 and some change, and the new construction cost would be $55,000 and some change. So it's not very specific.
Thank you.
And I've never done this before, but how would you go about repairing a stone foundation that's 120 years old? You jack the house up, disassemble all the rocks, replace the ones that have crumbled to sand, and then reassemble it all? Seems kind of crazy, but things do wear out.
This is Commissioner Meyer. I think we have had people who've done that before. I mean, so I'm not saying it
Yes.
isn't expensive or whatever. I'm just saying it's not something that hasn't been done.
There is a point of no return
I would agree with
where you
that.
have too much that is unstable and you cannot, I mean, you're saving 5 stones to replace 500.
Yeah, and even if you did do it, would it even pass code?
Well, and the longer people let things deteriorate without keeping up with them, then the worse it gets.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Well, I guess that addition with the stone foundation is not the one that bothers me. It's the one on the south. It's being rebuilt the same but slightly smaller, set back from the street so it doesn't pinch in on that window trim. But anyway, I think that's a detail. And as Commissioner Hawley said, I would be comfortable in making those kinds of, having those discussions and making those kind of recommendations in ARC. I don't have a big problem with the overall project. I think it's designed well right now, and it's a matter of can we get it to tick all those boxes?
I think it's
Well,
a thoughtful, aesthetic approach. Moved us into the HRC.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Meyer. I guess, does anyone object to the demolition aspect of the project? That's really, I think, what we're dancing around about. Does anybody have a strong feeling about that?
No.
I don't either. I think that the parts that they're wanting to demolish are fairly small and they're in really bad shape. But it's nice that they can save that middle, the most important part, and replace that foundation. I think that good way to go.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Johnson, and I echo the comments that we don't want to reward homeowners that just let a historic property disintegrate by saying, oh, well, yes, now it's so bad, now you can demolish it. But I am cognizant of the fact that at least a portion of it will be saved, and that this would make for better living conditions for future renters of this property. So, so that being said, I'm okay with the demolition, but it does rub me the wrong way that it's somebody letting a property, particularly a rental property, disintegrate over time.
I agree with Commissioner Johnson.
And this is Commissioner Meyer, just one more point. I don't have any issue with that and sending it to the HRC. I would just, or ARC, but I would just say that the information provided about the structural analysis, I personally find to be sparse and lacking any significant detail. This literally could be about any house in Lawrence that's over 15 years old. So I would expect in the future to, especially when we're talking about demolition, to have way more detail about the structural analysis, especially if you had one performed by somebody that there was a report by that person. I think that would be very handy. I mean, just generally talking about windows and siding and the roof is, doesn't meet my evidentiary standards, so to speak, but I'm a lawyer, so I think like a lawyer. All right.
Thank you. So we have a motion. Am I correct?
Moved. I said HRC, but
You
I
meant
intend the
ARC.
ARC, so let me amend.
You made me do that. Okay. I'll second that.
All right. So we have a motion by Commissioner Hawley and a second by Commissioner Meyer. And we will take, and that is to send it to the ARC. Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Meyer?
Commissioner Meyer, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. So we will get that scheduled. Thank you. Moving on to the original item number 1, DR 23-00429.
Okay, good evening again. This is item DR 23-00429. And with this application, the applicant is requesting to construct an addition to the rear of the existing structure at 1712 Kentucky Street. The subject property is located in the environs of the Thaddeus D. and Elizabeth K. Prentice House at 1645 Kentucky Street and requires a certificate of appropriateness review. This map shows the location of the subject property in relation to the listed property. The subject property is down here outlined in light blue, and then the listed property is highlighted in dark blue. This is the front southwest corner of the existing structure at 1712 Kentucky Street. The existing structure is a 2-story detached dwelling with a basement and stone foundation. The applicant is requesting to construct a new 2-story addition on the rear east elevation of the structure. The proposed addition would be clad with hardy plank lap siding with 5-inch exposure, and smart trim would be used at the corners. Composition shingles would be used on the roof, and the windows would be Anderson 100 series windows. This would be the proposed site plan for the property, showing the footprint of the addition in yellow. And then these would be the north and east elevations of the proposed addition. The east elevation would face the alley to the rear of the property. And then the south and west elevations of the proposed addition. The west elevation provided is a cross-section and only shows the addition itself. It does not show the existing structure. The applicant did provide renderings of the proposed addition showing the existing structure for comparison. This would be the west elevation, which would be visible from the front of the property facing Kentucky Street. And then this would be the north elevation showing the proposed addition to the rear of the existing structure. And then, again, the south elevation of the structure showing the proposed addition to the rear of the structure. Overall, the proposed project meets the standards and guidelines for review. The only concern for staff would be the exposed concrete foundation. Staff would recommend that it be clad with stone to match the foundation of the existing structure. But other than that, staff is of the opinion that the proposed project meets the standards and guidelines for review and recommends issuing the certificate of appropriateness.
Thank you.
And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Well, this is Commissioner Johnson. I have a question. So would the recommendation actually be that we would need to put a condition on this about the stone cladding on the foundation?
Staff's recommendation is that the stone be used on the foundation to match the existing structure, but there are examples of concrete foundation, exposed concrete foundation throughout the environs. With this being an environs review, it's the least stringent review applied to a project, and so that would be at the discretion of the commission.
And in the report, it mentioned windows. Is that still an issue or no?
The applicant has provided information on the windows being proposed for the structure, and those would be the Anderson 100 series windows, which have been approved by the HRC on similar projects in the environs.
Thanks.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to address the commission?
Sure. Paul Werner Architects. Yes, we agreed to the windows. I'd just like to remind the commission we're not in the Oriad overlay district. We are just in the environs, and if you looked at the aerial, we're like 25 feet almost outside of the environs, but we are happy to do the Anderson A100 windows. To be fair, we really don't want to do the stone on the foundation. We think you're going to see, 6 or 8 inches. It's in the back. The way Kentucky runs, and because of the size of the structures on both sides, you're just never going to see it. We do think we've done an awesome design on the addition. It is a completely separate structure. The owner of the property has taken very good care of this, the main house. And we already chose to build like a knee wall on both the sides of the second story, so they're 5 feet tall, and slope the roof. So we're kind of hiding the bedrooms underneath the roof to make the structure shorter so it doesn't impact the existing house, which was a design choice we made that I think it's the right decision. It makes the addition feel smaller. It is a whole lot harder than making a full 2-story and just putting trusses across the top. So I'd like to think maybe that outweighs the need to see a little stone on the back. But I'm happy to answer any questions. We think it's a good project and like to get started. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? No. Do we have any public comment on this item? I see no public comment. I'm in favor of this project. I think that the stone veneer on the foundation, well, let me look a little harder at that. Will be seen from the rear. Wish I had those renderings back.
Would you like me to show you?
Yes, please.
And which elevation did you want?
The front. And the south?
This is Commissioner Meyer. One thing that I would point out that was in the applicant's packet, not that I'm trying to split hairs, but as it was noted, is that the area of the addition is not actually in the environs, so that environs circle actually cuts, you can see it on
Oh, you're right.
slide or page, I guess it would be 19 of the packet. It really just kind of cuts through the original house on the property. So especially, I guess, if you're thinking about the foundation aspects of it, then really that new foundation is not even really in there. Do what you want to with that.
Can I get you on retainer?
Yes, yes. Always looking for the loopholes is what I'm doing.
When I was looking in the wall sections later in the packet, where it shows detailed of how close that grade is, it barely going to be able to see it.
Yeah, I would agree. Additional thoughts?
None.
None. I'd like to make a motion that we approve it as presented.
It's Commissioner Ezell, I second.
Any discussion before we take a vote? No?
No.
We'll take a vote then. Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Meyer?
Commissioner Meyer, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Chair Coleman is an aye. Thank you. Good luck. Okay, moving on to item 3 of the agenda, DR 24-00001, 900 Pennsylvania.
Okay. Again, this is item DR-24-0001. And with this application, the applicant is requesting to construct a new residence and detached garage on the vacant lot at 900 Pennsylvania Street. The subject property is located in the environs of the Edmondson House at 936 Pennsylvania Street and requires a certificate of appropriateness review. This map shows the location of the subject property in relation to the listed property. Up here in the top left corner is the subject property outlined in light blue, and then the listed property again is highlighted in dark blue. This is a photo of the subject property from the Pennsylvania Street right-of-way. The property is currently a vacant, undeveloped lot, and there's no record that the property has ever been developed. This would be the proposed site plan for the new construction. The proposed residence is shown in yellow and the proposed 2-car garage in orange. This would be the front east elevation of the primary structure. Fiber cement lap siding with 4-inch exposure and 4-inch trim would be used on both the new structures. The primary structure would include a model limestone veneer around the front northeast corner of the structure. The roof of the structure would have white soffits and light-colored asphalt shingles, and the windows used would be Anderson 100 series with black or dark bronze exterior finish. This would be the west elevation, visible from the alley right-of-way. Here you can see the proposed primary structure, as well as the detached garage in the foreground of the elevation. The subject property slopes east to west, so the primary structure would include a daylight basement. And then per the applicant in the submitted application materials, if the grading allows for it, the basement would include a walkout, which would include doors as shown here on the west elevation of the structure. And then these are showing the south and north elevations of the structure. On the north elevation, here at the center is where there would be a cutout in the structure for an outdoor patio. And then you can see how the grading changes from the east to the west side of the property, so that the proposed detached garage would be lower in elevation. And then the applicant also provided renderings of the project, which I'll walk through real quick. At the top is the northeast elevation, looking towards the primary structure from the front property line. And then again, the east elevation, looking straight on at the front of the new primary structure. Again, at the top is the southeast elevation, or a southeast view, which provides another view of the primary structure from the front property line. At the bottom is the west view, looking towards the new structure from the rear of the property, again with the detached garage in the foreground. And then another rear view of the primary structure and garage on the north side. Overall, the proposed project meets the standards and guidelines for review. The new construction would be modern in design and would most closely match the character of the environs along Delaware Street, which has had several newer additions and construction projects approved in recent years. The only concern for staff would be the use of cedar columns on the front porch. Unpainted wood is not typically considered an appropriate material type, and staff would recommend that the cedar columns be painted for compatibility. Other than that, staff is of the opinion that the proposed project meets the standards and guidelines for review and recommends issuing the certificate of appropriateness. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Avery. If there are no commissioner questions for Avery, we can move on to the applicant, if the applicant is present. Oh, Commissioner Klein, did you have a?
The applicant can go ahead and speak first, and then I'll ask
Okay.
a question.
Thank you.
Good evening. Fran Luck with Schneider Associates Architecture. I'm the residential designer on this project. This is Clay Weinock, the applicant. We're here for questions. I think the point was raised about the cedar columns. The desire is to keep them just in their natural form because it goes very well with a modern concept, and it is less maintenance for the client. If you have any questions.
Any questions for the applicant?
This is Commissioner Klein. I confess I did not read online newspapers to find out if perchance there had been some other structure on this property in the past. So my question is, I'm wondering what you may find when you start digging. Do you have any knowledge at present on whether or not you're going to run into any underground sewers or water lines or anything from the 19th century, perhaps, that you might not expect?
Not currently. I believe that the previous owner has moved some dirt from their construction from the, I think it was 2 lots north. So that's all we're aware of for now.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I've lost control of my computer.
Public comment.
Huh?
Public comment.
Yes, is there any public comment? No. There it is. Thank you. Okay. Items of discussion.
I think it's a good infill project, which is what everybody's wanting, so.
This is Commissioner Johnson. I would agree with staff in that I would prefer the columns to be painted.
As a neighbor, I think it will fit in well, and also think it's a good infill project. You'll need to replace those columns in 20 years. Cedar left unexposed or treated is exceptionally well-lasting. I think it's mostly it's an aesthetic consideration, correct?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the cedar.
I might add, just from personal experience, squirrels enjoy eating cedar, so they find it pretty tasty if it's not treated. Just an FYI.
I'm not making a motion, but I'd personally be fine approving it as is. There's lots of untreated wood in the environs, maybe not in the exact column, but major elements. Applicant would just go in it in their own risk, but I think it'll be great.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
And I just want it noted, when we're talking about the design of it, that it does say in the application materials that they do plan on installing solar panels on the west end. So in case anybody didn't catch that, when you're talking about design or whatnot, that's, their intention is to put that on the west end of the south-facing roof. So that'll be a separate issue, but one to consider.
Yes, and this is Avery Kerner, planning staff. I apologize that I neglected to mention that that information was included in the initial application submittal. With the new adoption of Chapter 22, staff is able to review solar panel projects that are visible from the public right-of-way administratively. And so that portion of the project is not being considered for review tonight and will be reviewed separately by staff.
And this is Commissioner Meyer. I just wanted to point it out because sometimes things happen later and then some commissioner drives by and says, what is that? We didn't know about that. So I'm just saying that it was in here.
Yeah, they're clearly on
So.
the drawings, yeah. Yeah, well, I would like to make a motion that we approve the submission as it is submitted.
Seconded.
Okay? Any discussion before we take a vote? No? Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, no.
Commissioner Meyer?
Commissioner Meyer, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Klein?
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye, so the motion passes 6-1.
Good luck.
Thank you. The next item, item 4, is DR 24-00004, 609 New Hampshire.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lynn Braddock-Zollner, Historic Resources Administrator for the city. This project is super exciting, if I can get to the right one.
Which one are you doing?
609 New Hampshire, this one.
Got it.
Yep. hit share, please? Okay, awesome.
All right. 609 New Hampshire Street. It is a rehabilitation. It is a downtown design guidelines review and also a certificate of approval because it is located in the context area of the J.B. Shane Thompson Studio, located at 615 Massachusetts Street. Most of you will know this property is the Journal World Complex. It's this area outlined in the light green here. It encompasses the property from New Hampshire to Massachusetts Street, from the alley that divides it from a small parking lot in 6th Street, and then down about half a block. The National Register Historic District actually starts to the south of this, and this property is not included in the National Register Historic District. This is a couple of slides looking at the Massachusetts Street elevation. When this structure was built, there was a considerable amount of design input so that this was to house the printing press for the Journal World, and it did not need a lot of windows or fenestration for the building, and so the design solution at that time to break up the massing was to inset blind architectural details that gave the appearance of infilled windows to try to help break up that overall massing. And then, of course, there were other brick architectural detailing on the structure itself. And this is showing that southern half of that Massachusetts Street elevation. As I'm sure most of you have walked by this many times, there's a gate that runs along the sidewalk here, so this section of the building is actually recessed a little bit. This is showing that north end of the structure, the loading dock structure area. In part of the proposal, this would actually become a courtyard. And then this is showing the the eastern half of that north elevation. This is showing the east elevation, and so we are talking about the building all the way from the alley here all the way through to the loading dock here. This is a phased project, so there's kind of a big overall project and then specifically a restaurant portion of the project that was more detailed in the staff report. For the overall project, this would remain the primary entrance to the structure. The roof of this section of the building would be removed and there would be an open courtyard space on the interior. And then this would all be rehabilitated with windows and door changes to accommodate the new uses. This is showing that specific area that's part of the detailed application for the proposed new restaurant. This is the overall site plan of the proposed project. This here at the 613 and 615 New Hampshire Street is that new restaurant that has the detailed information in your packet. And this is just showing how the rest of the property is going to be broken into different sections for different uses. This shows that main building along New Hampshire Street would remain with the roof coming off that section of the building to have that interior courtyard access. Some quick rendering showing what I was mentioning before, where they would take those existing architectural detailings on the structure and actually open those up into windows so that this west elevation of the structure along Massachusetts Street would be activated. There would be 2 doors on this elevation. The fence that has that recessed area would be maintained. That would be a little courtyard area that could be utilized by the new businesses. And then here on the very north end, you see there would be a new small fence here that creates a courtyard around that loading dock area. This is a better rendering showing those loading dock doors would be infilled with glazing systems to allow for the new use, and then the creation of that little courtyard area there on the corner. This is kind of showing a view from New Hampshire Street, to give you an overall, it's quite the large project. It's very exciting to see this being proposed to reactivate this section of downtown that's been vacant for some time now. But this shows the roof being gone and that open yard courtyard is part of the proposal. And then this is the restaurant proposal that is part of your application for this evening. This is showing that elevation in a little bit more detail. That main door entry would stay the same to go into that courtyard area. This is a little bit of a close-up of the restaurant area that's part of the application for this evening. If you'll notice, the intention is to paint the existing red brick white and to have wood timber columns to support the canopy. This actually here on the left side of your screen is an addition that would enclose the existing loading dock canopy to allow for needed space for the restaurant, primarily their smoker units. It's a barbecue restaurant, so that would be enclosed, and then you would have the open restaurant area here. The parking lot that exists in front of the structure would be maintained as a parking lot, but also would be designed so that it could be roped off at some points and used as extra outdoor space. This is showing that new brick addition, the brick and the storefront glazing system to create this new addition. Something that's actually pretty exciting about this is, if you've noticed, there's a little alley that goes through between the Journal World building and then the building that's closest on the south, and they would be opening a new alley entry into the building and activating this west elevation off of the alley that goes through here. This is a close-up showing, again, that where the restaurant would be, showing the painted brick, the new white brick, the glazing system, and the wood columns. This is a very unique project. We don't have this type of structure downtown. This is really only our big industrial complex that we have located in downtown. And it's exciting to see it being rehabilitated in such a way that it doesn't cause for the demolition and waste of building materials and energies that are already embodied into a structure that's already been constructed. Concerns for the staff reviewing this with the guidelines and the overall context of the Shane Thompson studio is that we don't have white brick in downtown Lawrence. We do have some historically painted brick buildings that have been painted light colors, and I believe there are a couple that are white downtown. So there, it does exist. It's just not common. We do not have unpainted wood timbers as supports for canopies downtown or in storefronts. The guidelines actually speak to not having rough or unpainted wood timbers in storefront areas. They're not specific to timbers for canopy structure. So those are all things that can be considered. This was really challenging for staff to try to look at that context area and recognizing that the applicant really wants to create a project where their restaurant stands out and has its unique identity in a building that's rather large and nondescript in some ways, and especially on this New Hampshire Street side. And so being sympathetic to that and looking at their design options. But staff looking at those design guidelines and that overall character of the neighborhood and those two elements not really being part of the existing character of the area was concerned and thought that perhaps discussions with the Architectural Review Committee could work with the applicant on some design alternatives that might help them achieve their overall goal and better meet the downtown design guidelines. The soapbox part of of my presentation would be painting brick. Painting brick is rarely, if ever, a good treatment for the masonry structure. Brick is porous and breathes, and usually painting brick will seal the brick so that it will trap moisture inside, as brick is meant to allow moisture to move through the brick from the interior to the exterior, so that if you have humidity or damp on the interior, it can migrate out. Also, when you get rain and snow and weather effects on the exterior, it does seep into the brick. Moisture that gets trapped in brick can cause the brick structure itself to fail, with spalling and other significant issues down the road. So the Secretary of the Interior does not recommend painting brick, so that would be one of the concerns for staff with painting that brick that exists. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions that you may have.
One clarification I have, are we reviewing the general overall project and the first phase, or just the first phase?
The entire project, the general overall project, all those openings on the Massachusetts Street elevation and the conversion of those loading dock doors on that north elevation, the whole thing, and then with more detail on the restaurant portion.
Okay. So will there be more phases that will come back?
It looks like from the design and the information that the applicant has submitted that there won't be a lot more changes to the rest of the structure. If there are, they would probably be an administrative review and not a full commission review, simply because their goal right now is to maintain that structure and just do the minimal modifications to make it more interactive with the environment.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for staff before we hear from the applicant?
Well, I have one. This is Commissioner Johnson. I really love seeing those windows on Massachusetts Street. I walked past there and went, oh, if those were only windows. I'm wondering about on the New Hampshire side, that main entrance, there's a big blank wall there. Was there any discussion of some windows along there?
We have not had those discussions with the applicant about doing any additional fenestration in this wall right here. It is an existing structure, and so with their intent to remove the roof and have that as an open courtyard, there won't really be building behind that wall. It'll be that open courtyard space, so I don't know if that's something that they might consider in the future, or if that's a discussion that you would like to have with them this evening.
Thank you. Is the applicant present, and would you like to address the commission? Yes.
Sure. I've got a thumb drive. I'm going to try and put it in here. Aha. Okay. Just bear with me 1 second here. Okay. I also need to share the screen here.
Yeah, log that up, share screen, and start slideshow on your PowerPoint.
Gotcha. Thank you, Kurt.
Should be able to hit.
Okay.
Oh, I don't think that's the right one.
Yeah, you're right.
Be in the bottom.
You want to come on over? Thank you. I think I need to do it through Zoom.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. It's a little bit premature to load these slides because that's really for the Q39 portion. So my name is Patrick Watkins. I'm a local attorney. I'm here on behalf of 3D Development. Eric Wolschlager is on the Zoom call, and Dave Herron is with me here tonight. And Lynn is right. This is an exciting project, and you've probably heard a little bit about it. I want to set a little bit of the context here, though. It's exciting because from a preservation standpoint, we've seen a number of applications on this parcel. Lynn's seen them probably more than your board, and it would go back a ways before we saw the last. But I think there's been 2 demolition permits for this site that have been considered over the years. This is probably the first legitimate development that's actually considered saving the building. You know, we had a conference center years ago that was slated for here. Just recently, I think in 2020, they were considering a grocery store and apartments. So this is the first developer to come to town with a development proposal that considers saving the building. And there's some things to save here. So as a community, this is the first time we've seen an adaptive reuse. It's certainly, as Lynn mentioned, one of the largest of the development projects that you're going to see in the downtown area, 70,000 square feet. It's also exciting to bring to you all this development because it comes from a developer that has a track record of being able to accomplish just this type of industrial to new use conversion. 3D Development has had success in the Crossroads District. If you haven't visited their website or heard about them, they have a great website. But you should take a look at that when you get the opportunity. They're perennially recipients of architectural awards, preservation awards. I'm honored to be here on their behalf. They have some exciting things going on in Kansas City. So it's great to have an interest of a developer that's familiar with preservation and really the preservation that's needed for downtown Lawrence. I could say a lot of things about Q39, but I think there's like a rule that it has to speak for itself, barbecue that is. So I'll let them do the speaking. But as you guys have found, there's really 2 parts to this. This is the overall project, and Eric Wolschlager will walk through sort of the design on the overall project, and then Dave will walk through what's going on with the Q39, because that's really where the HRC interest lies. And then I'll follow up with a couple of concluding thoughts, and then be happy to respond to questions. So Eric, are you with us?
I am here. Can everybody hear me?
Yep. I'll let you share.
Yeah, I can. I'll just quickly try to show a few things. Honestly, Lynn, you did a fantastic job walking through the project and giving an overview. But as mentioned, my name's Eric Wolschlager, and I am one part of 3D Development here in Kansas City. As mentioned, we specialize in historic rehab, breathing new life into, in Kansas City, an old creamery building, an old Piggly Wiggly warehouse sitting in the Crossroads Freight House District, the Corrigan Station tower that sits in the middle of the Crossroads, and currently spending a lot of time on the 230,000 square foot Kansas City Star production and press facility that is there. And it's not that we have a penchant for rehabbing newspaper facilities, but we do really love finding ways to use some of these historic shells, or even just what we think are, really, really well constructed walls. Helps make the projects just all that easier if you've got a lot of stuff already started and built. But obviously we love Massachusetts Street and agree, and I can go through facade by facade if needed. We just always have agreed that this facade has a big opportunity to breathe a little more daylight into the structure and really interact more with the street. And so, as mentioned, on the southwest corner of this project here, kind of framed in here as a square, This section is going to be intended as a new 15,000 square foot office user that will activate this old patio with their own individual entrance. They'll have kitchen and dining facility right off the front of it, so their employees can eat and socialize out on this patio while also entering and exiting the property from there. The northwest corner has an opportunity to, be more office up on the upper floors, which we're receiving significant interest in, potentially another ground floor office or retail space. We do have an LOI out on a retailer here. And then as you continue to go around the property, as mentioned again, we'll wall in a little area that would be, a courtyard or patio. The projects we're calling the press yards, the press being the obvious portion of that name, the yards because of, multiple indoor-outdoor spaces that really are featured on this project, whether it's, lower level courtyard and patio or upper level patios that kind of help communicate out to the main street. Even as we look across the north facade, which is an old alleyway, our plan is to, breathe life and really lean into what is a cool old rail spur and find ways to help the building communicate that, whether it's engaging with local artists, again, punching out old openings that have been bricked shut or old doors, turning into ways, again, for this project to communicate out. It was discussed and shown here, this unfortunately unusable roofed-in area here, which is very deep and dark. As pointed out, there are 0 windows on the east facade of this building. And we thought, rather than try to repair and figure out a use for this really deep and dark space, it was best to rip the roof off and create a really cool gathering place, something that could be greatly appreciated on Massachusetts Street or in this corridor here. And so again, this facade, while it has no windows, we really love the original opening here. And we think it's kind of a secret garden type entrance where, for those who know, you walk through this thing and all of a sudden you're greeted by towering trees, video screen, yard games, organic materials really lining the floor of that. Again, with the property, having a small food hall or a little tiny retail kiosk in here, being able to communicate inside and outside. And again, we love the idea. We do a lot of smaller office suites in Kansas City. We know there's especially, these 1 to 10 person companies are the people coming and populating offices, going to lunches, networking, meeting, mingling. We see a huge demand for these. And so again, this smaller executive wing of the building, we think repurposes well as smaller office suites to complement the larger office spaces, as well as the potential for a small retail, possibly coffee shop on the lower level. Which then brings us to what we'll probably spend the most time speaking on tonight. Again, so far what I've shown you, and again, we can go through page by page if you want to, or we can share this to show we're taking old enclosed openings and popping them open. For the most part, that's what this project is about. When we get to this old loading dock area, this was an original design that Q39 has since enhanced. This probably represents the most significant change for the entire facade of the project. So I'll go ahead and pause there. If there's any questions for us as the developer, I can definitely field those now or later. But I think my main goal here is to really introduce Dave with the architect for the Q39 project.
Thank you, Eric.
Come on up, Dave.
Hi, good evening. David Herron with Herron & Partners. I'm a sole practitioner in Kansas City. I was asked by the owner of this project through another project to propose a design for 613 and 615, which is the southeast corner of the project. Let me see here if I can share.
I think your screen.
All right, gotcha, thank you. I do want to point out that Q39 is going to take ownership of these 2 buildings, so we are going to have our own property, our own separate entity. And she wanted to be an owner and not a tenant. And she's also, an anchor tenant, if you will, and wants to be part of the community and be a fixture here. So I think that's very important and part of the reason why I think she wants to invest in this property. So as you can see from the first slide, I think you're familiar with the site, but we are basically the loading dock for the press building. It's a utilitarian use. It's not architecturally that attractive, needs some love, and we're hoping that we can provide that. What I wanted to show here on the two slides, the slides on the left with the orange line are the major development of the project in which the facades are staying intact, and the red are the areas that we're proposing to do modifications. The dashed line would be a new addition on the east side. What I have added here is the percentage of facade for the east, north, and west elevations. And as you can see, our portion of Q39 on New Hampshire is about 9% of the overall facade of the project. One key component in how we kind of got here is that, for us to provide the same services that they're providing in Kansas City, we had to have a super large kitchen, not necessarily for use in the restaurant, but for catering and other such things that we think are optimal for the business. But because we are right up against the south and the west property line, there's no place for trash, there's no place for the smokers, which are essential to the business, and so we started looking at the loading dock. And the loading dock provides that opportunity for us to put that equipment, but again, that's back of house equipment, it's not very attractive, and so we were trying to come up with a way to shield that. And we also wanted to expand the kitchen, and that's what you're seeing in the red zone, and then also create a new entry on 613. Again, if you start to look at New Hampshire holistically, we're basically 9% of the overall complex development and 32% of New Hampshire when it comes to facade coverage. And if you break that down a little bit further, up atop is the existing building rendering, and then what we're proposing is down below with the new, the new construction here in the foreground that would shelter and conceal the smokers, allowed us an expansion of the kitchen, an indoor-outdoor operable door to allow for activation of the parking lot, which we're hoping to achieve for seasonal use. And then what we have remaining is the red zone, and that is the existing building. And so what we try to do is take cues from the existing building to help create the new architecture. And so the elements that we try to do is we've tried to respect the corbelling and basically avoid impacting it. And we put the canopy, which is part of what's already there, we just took and created a new one with a colonnade. And to keep that nice horizontal line going across the building, we put it in what I'm calling a freeze layer. And that way, again, we're not being disruptive to the existing brick. And then we're also holding it off of the north side so it doesn't engage the existing historical building. And so these are just some of the details when you get up to it. We have the intermediate zone here, which is what I'm calling the freeze, and that's where it will extend the canopy. The corbelling actually stops and terminates with the existing canopy, which would be removed. We're emulating the columns. We are proposing to do wood timber columns because that is part of the vernacular that we're developing as a company. And we want to have some similarities and concepts with the new and future restaurants that we may have. And I also included this slide. One of the reasons I think we also landed on the painted brick is because when you do an infill brick, to me, it becomes a little bit of a hodgepodge of trying to match mortar, trying to match the brick and things like that. So we thought that to make the building cohesive for the existing part that we could possibly paint it. So very thankful for Lynn's explanation. I actually taught building science at KU, so she's exactly right. Like if you paint the brick with the wrong paint, it's going to create problems. So there is a breathable elastomeric coating that we could use, and we're proposing. There's also stain that we've started looking into, which has a little bit more durability. I have to check on the breathability, but it is an option that we are exploring and are willing to explore. This is kind of a view of the south. There's really not a lot of the building that is exposed. There's the portion here of the loading dock before it hits the adjacent loading dock to the building to the south. And then also showing kind of the alleyway. So again, just a small change to what would be visible. And so this is a more developed drawing that I've been working on since we've submitted. So up top, it shows the existing condition, and on the bottom, it shows the new proposed condition. And so again, right here would be an infill window that just not working with our kitchen layout for the layout and security and whatnot. And so that would be an infill brick area that we would need to address. This is from the Mass Street west side, again, talking about this interest that we have in activating the alleyway. And so again, a very small portion of the existing building is visible. This is a picture of that from Mass. And as you can see, it's not a brick masonry building, it's actually a concrete block, and it's painted. So we're trying to figure out, how do we dress this up, make it more interest for people and better, focal point from the end of the alley to draw people in. The other thing I wanted, again, we're dealing with trash service, and there's a lot of different things that we have to do on the back of the building. This is our only alley access. The 615 building is the only one that's at this elevation that we can service, and so it was the natural home for the kitchen. And so we have to have our service back here, and there's no place to put our trash. So that's what the large overhead door is going to enclose. Then we have our main service access and a utility door. And then on the left side, you'll see here is we're proposing a nice storefront. We'd like to illuminate that, provide, we'll go down a signage path on what's appropriate there, and then a small canopy for protection. And this is just a small rendering of that, but you can see the modifications to the building. We were proposing to paint this. I think we're open to suggestions, and so we can, work with you on that as well. And then this is just, back to the front east of New Hampshire elevation of what we're looking at. And again, it's utilitarian in nature, and compared to the rest of the development, this is the ugly duckling. And so the question for me is, as an architect, is like, how do you do something that's appropriate? How do you do something that's, takes the right scale, perhaps the right materials, and apply it in a way that was emulating something that's there? And so my owner directive was to investigate this white masonry. So we've looked at this Endicott glaze. We've looked at, there's not a lot of white brick, but there is a handful. We have landed on this one. We think it's nice because it's rusticated. It doesn't look shiny and new. It has a little bit of texture to it. The metal panel would be an access to that, and that would be for the overhead canopy fascia, and that would come down on the south side. And then for the underbelly of the soffit, we would like to clad that in either cedar or a composite. I'm with you all. I kind of like the composite if it's a good one, because it doesn't rot and it keeps its color and integrity longer. And so this is an updated rendering of our concept of what we think this could look like. And we hope that you guys are as excited about the project as we are, and we're willing to take comments.
Thank you, Dave. I'll leave this up. I just have a couple of concluding thoughts. The design guidelines you all are familiar with. This is the downtown overlay district. It calls out the level of review to be applied to applications like this. The highest level of review is for individually listed properties or properties that are contributing to the district. This, as Lynn properly noted, is not in the district. It's in the overlay area, but it's also not listed. It's not contributing to a district. The design guidelines specifically say that less scrutiny is applied to projects in environs. That's the expectation for this project, is my understanding. The goals of design review are also stated on page 7 and 8 of the design guidelines. They simply state these guidelines are not meant to dictate design choices or to serve as a checklist for good design. They're also not intended to be applied in such a stringent manner as to prevent creative or contemporary design. You all are familiar with these design guidelines. That's our expectation for this review. And we certainly appreciate Lynn's review. We did meet with her on a number of occasions. She's been accessible. This has been a long time in planning. And she noted that most of the project meets the design guidelines. And I don't want to miss the opportunity to say what a major accomplishment that is. This is a 70,000 square foot downtown building. How often are we going to be able to apply the design guidelines to such a large footprint? And if applied to maybe 10 buildings in a row on Mass Street, like in this case, it would be the equivalent size, how often would we allow a deviation of 1 or 2 times? So I would like to at least have that context taken into account here, that this is a massive project. We should also note that all of the Mass Street frontage, that main corridor of the downtown district, meets the design guidelines here, and that's also an accomplishment. Mass Street is the side of the building that faces the historically designated property. New Hampshire Street is the secondary area as far as the design guidelines are concerned, and certainly the 600 block of New Hampshire has its own issues with development and need. Design review issues are really found in this loading dock area, and I need to note that under every circumstance, this loading dock area is going to need some attention. Any development proposal is going to probably require some significant design areas. I look at this rendering and I'm compelled to tell you that I used to deliver papers for the Journal World, and I used to walk into this circulation area on a daily basis, and it needs help. So under every scenario, I think you're going to see a lot of design changes to this area. We're confident you all take this into account. We're happy to respond to questions that you might have. We're pleased to bring this to your attention tonight.
Thank you, Patrick and Eric and David. I do have one question. We have this this view up here of this facade, and can you, maybe David could point to, just for clarification for all the commissioners, where the new part is and how much, will that loading dock be removed and then this new part built, and kind of where's the end of the new part?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let me see. Can you see my mouse?
Yes.
All right, see where the people are standing? That is the end of the loading dock. And so we haven't engaged my engineer yet, but per my discussions, that loading dock should be able to take a new construction load on top of it. And so we are going to infill and kind of slide in front of it with the new facade. So the new facade does extend further past the loading dock to this edge of the garage door. So the areas that are painted would be here, here, and above.
Commissioner Meyer, Patrick, you kindly and repeatedly remind us of what the guidelines stated. As you noted, we know them. Is this your hill that you're dying on? I mean, because in terms of the staff report, it's generally, I mean, pretty positive and optimistic. The only thing really of issue is the white paint and the cedar columns. So is this it? This is the hill that you, I mean, that you're...
Yeah, we've had the conversation about white paint. It's unfortunately in the design guidelines that even though there's a lot of painted buildings downtown, you have to recommend against it. This building will be white. The columns, I think there's probably some wiggle room on. We're happy to go to ARC to talk about these things, but we've had the discussion already.
So you're like, we're making this white no matter what. That's what you're saying?
You know, we're happy to talk about it. There's some architectural discussions about what happens, but this area needs to be distinguished. They are building new facilities in other places. They're white. And this will comply
Other
with their...
places?
In Kansas City, they have
Okay.
new openings.
Kansas City, not Lawrence.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's a hill we're dying on. I think there's a lot of good things to say about this.
But it sounds.
3.9% or 3% of the facade is going to be white.
So the new part of this, why does it have to be brick?
We thought it was contextual. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, the owner really likes the brick, and they have iron spot brick similar to this building on their other projects, and which I think are going to eventually be white. But no, that was the aesthetic directive that I was given. And so I'd say the only difference is I'm looking at a thin brick versus a full-size brick because of space and weight and all those things that we have to consider. But no, we thought it was appropriate to blend. We were just going to do it new rather than just paint everything. We were going to actually bring a white fired brick.
Well, before we die on hills, I would like to say that I think this is a wonderful project, and I love to see the ideas and the plans and somebody actually taking care with this anchor of the north end of downtown. So with that, I mean, the reason you don't see very many painted brick buildings is because it does destroy the bricks. So I appreciated the offer, of looking at stains and other things. I don't know how a stain would bleach out a red brick to be white, but maybe technology has found a way. I don't know, but it is, I see what the vision is to make it look like one mass. You're taking one part of a very large building and trying to make it look like its own thing. So I get it, and I wonder how that will play, with the white glazed brick beside the painted brick. I don't know, but these kind of details I don't think are appropriate for the commission to discuss. I think that unless, you all tell me, but it's.
I think that it's always appropriate for the commission to discuss, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate to talk about white.
And we're not afraid of frank discussions. I appreciate Commissioner Myers' cut to the chase. We're happy to talk about these things, but.
I'm just saying, let's not throw out the good thing for the little problem. Let's address the little problem in an appropriate way.
Well, I'm not.
If we're being asked, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jeannie.
Yeah, Commissioner Klein. If we're being asked to talk about the whole project and not just the Q39 portion of it, I have several questions. I want to reiterate what Patrick said about, I think this is fabulous that the developer is choosing to redevelop, reuse, I should say, the existing building. And I want to congratulate the conceptualizers for that. When I first saw the white, it shocked me, okay? And I'm trying to imagine a platinum white, which is going to glare and call, I would say, undue attention to itself. And I don't think it needs that much attention for a new restaurant. I like the idea of a softer kind of a white. I mean, this rendering right now in nighttime or twilight, I guess you could say, looks reasonable. But when I think about a stark white, a platinum white, I'm thinking White Castle, even though there's no castle here involved. Anyway, but these are personal aesthetic choices. One of my big questions was going back to the north end. Why would you take the parking lot away from the parking for City Hall?
What's shown in there right now is just conceptual. That parcel's, a separate parcel, nothing that we own. We've just kind of played around with the idea of what we would do with it if we were to have it as part of this entertainment and mixed use project.
Okay, because obviously if you want to make this both, retail, restaurant, office spaces, coffee house, courtyard, et cetera, to hang out and have meetings and what have you, people are going to need parking for this place. And so I'm wondering, where are you planning on having people park? The people who use this, every day, as well as the people who use it at the night, where are they going to park?
And we've had discussions with the city and utilizing the underutilized hundreds of parking stalls that exist just to the northeast along the riverfront there in the old mall and current hotel. So I think, what we've done just through studying parking in the area is there's ample parking within a 6-block radius, but there's plenty within a half a block radius as well.
Okay, I'm just thinking that even that lot 10 at the top could add some more parking for this particular development, as well as for folks who come. I always think of that parking lot as a place for people who are attending city commission and all kinds of commission meetings and stuff, that it's nice and handy to be right across the street like that. And yes, there is the northeast parking lot, but I'm just, concerned about that parking lot. I just think it'd be nice to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, everybody would park inside of their favorite place as close as they could if it was possible. And I think what we find is, especially in developing communities, developing things that are worth transiting to, destinations, walkable city streets, enjoyable facades like this one that, not only look attractive, but have multiple uses where they may have roped it off and have, game day activations and things like that. These are all things that people want to walk toward. And that's really the focus of all of our developments, is creating environments people want to enjoy inside and out. And the thought of walking 5 or 10 minutes toward something like that really starts to evaporate. And so I, completely agree. I think there's always room to add more parking and convenience to anything you do. However, there's a trade-off with that too. If in terms of creating an environment that is worth being at, parking lots are not always the most attractive things to see as you walk up to a space. So I mean, it's a balance. But we believe there's ample parking in this area. I mean, we could zoom out on a map and highlight all the city lots in the area. But we've talked at length with the city about that.
Well, and this is Commissioner Johnson. The parking lot there is a public lot and isn't part of this right at the moment. There's no.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
right.
beyond our purview.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just wanted to
It's a
make
nice
clear that
distraction
parking
in our
lot
model.
wasn't going away.
Not under
Yeah.
HRC's purview.
That
I'll just make a
parking
comment.
lot.
I think this is going to be this looks great. I think white it's going to look awesome. And that's without my HRC hat, but I think it's going to look great. On the block, I work on the block immediately to the south. There are 3 light or painted brick blocks buildings that exist 1 block immediately to the south. I think contextually it's going to fit. From an owner's hat and longevity hat, I'd be curious, does it make sense to, I'm an architect too, would it be a better building and have better curb appeal for continuity of the sheen of the white? Like, do you adjust the weeps and actually laminate existing brick onto the new and make it a big mass wall, and there's no paint differentiation? But that's details that are the smaller group, and maybe with HRC input. Also point out, I don't know if you've talked with Prosoco here in town. I bet they'd love to help, and they do all sorts of cleaning and staining recommendations to get to where this is. I'd wholeheartedly recommend sending this to the ARC for tweak level. I think it's going to be a fit in and be a boon to downtown.
If there are continued clarification questions, we can do that, but I think we need to take some public comment before we really get into discussion. If there's any public comment.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dennis Brown on the board of the Lawrence Preservation Alliance. Our president, Mike Delaney, is out of town this week, but we've discussed this. I just have to use the word that's being used over and over again tonight, is LPA is excited about this project. First off, just to have a project that's not going to scrape the site clean of all of that brick and throw it somewhere. I don't know where, next to where the stadium is, probably. That's an editorial comment. That's a huge bonus. Improving the interaction of the west wall of this building with the street level on Massachusetts Street is huge. The courtyards are, I agree with the developer, are going to be an exciting prospect for people walking through the building, and then there's the courtyard. It's going to be a fun thing. LPA, we've talked about this a little bit. We would not be recommending denial of this project based on the findings that are in the staff report. That being said, we do feel like it would be great if the Q39 architect and developer could meet with the ARC and see if certain things could be adjusted or worked out. I say this because buildings should last longer than people. Buildings frequently last longer than businesses. When you're making a decision on a building that's irreversible and painting the brick, it's not going to become unpainted. Maybe somebody later on doesn't want white and they want it blue or gray or something. That adds additional coats of paint. More opportunities for paint failure and future maintenance. That's something worth pondering. Just taking a step back and pondering and see if there's something that maybe in the middle that could work out in some regard. And that's where I would like to pivot from my LPA self to my professional old house painter self, 45 years plus painting older houses in Lawrence and working as a color designer. I have several thoughts that maybe could help spur discussion at the ARC level. One being, and Commissioner Klein already brought this up, a cream color would be way more compatible with the rest of the brick of this half a square block structure than a white. And I guarantee you, if you did that, color professionals would be saying, oh, that cream color looks great. Everybody else is going to be saying that white looks great. That's just going to be the way it is. It's something to think about. I don't have any experience with masonry stains, but that's something that they've been at least thinking about and I think should also be explored. Another thing I think should be explored, I realize the white, it's part of the Q39 brand. So the point I'm about to make is, does a branding color have to be on the entire building? I think about, just for a point of reference, large interior spaces where there's a main field color, but then the client wants to have accent walls. So there's a color that's an accent wall. What if the branding color on the exterior of this building was thought of more like in an accent wall thought process? Obviously, where the sign is, where your entry doors are, you want that branding color, but does it have to be everywhere else too? On this picture here, this rendering here, the top of the building that's over the, so that's a canopy there? That, what, 2 or 3 feet? Would the building look better if that was a continuation of the red brick that kind of connects it to the rest of the structure? Maybe there are other walls on the side or the west elevation where you really don't have to paint it white to denote that you're Q39. I think that would be an interesting discussion to think about at the ARC level. Elastomeric is an interesting idea, although I worry a little bit about that. Elastomeric is generally a heavy-bodied material that has high bonding qualities, so I would worry a little bit over time about that maybe causing a spalling. of the outer face of the brick. But I appreciate the general tenor of this discussion on both sides, that there is room for some conversation, and maybe the conversation doesn't go anywhere, but before an irreversible decision is made, now's the time to just double check. Are we thinking of all our options? Do we have to paint the entire building? Are there alternative painting materials that could work? Now's the time to do that at ARC, and best of luck on the project.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? No? Okay. I agree with Dennis that there are options that can be explored, and we would be remiss if we did not explore those. I think that it's a wonderful project, and I don't want to see anything changed except for that painted brick. So, Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Meyer. Dennis, you mentioned the branding, and that was interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but my Google search of Q39 indicates that the south location has actually got red brick on its facade, right in Kansas City.
Both of them have
Or,
unpainted brick.
and the other one's got red stonish stuff anyway. But, so, I mean, just aesthetically, I mean, do I like this looking at it? Yeah. I mean, but I'm always, I guess I always think about the standards that we have. And more importantly, I'm always worried about precedents that we're setting for other properties, especially when we're talking about downtown. So I think there's maybe 3 people in this room, Dennis, myself, and Lynn, who were involved in the Oriad Hotel project, which was, I think everybody thinks was a great major project for Lawrence. And this is way a bazillion times easier to talk about than that project was. But, you know, we think about what people who come after us want to think about when they're asking for whatever for their project. Everybody thinks they have a great project. Everybody thinks that the exceptions are appropriate to their project. So that's just as what is in the back of my mind. Now, also to the point about the color white, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That's an ARC thing. I will remind people that just as a small example of white, Sunflower Ceramics down at 10th and New Hampshire is white brick painted on the corner there. Not justifying it, or maybe I'm just being devil's advocate, but so that is down the street from there.
But it was a gas station.
Right, and it's white painted brick.
So, yeah, so that's the other impression that I personally get as well, just by looking at this rendering right now, is sort of a gas station-ish feeling to it. Only, again, the white color, but also that expansive glass, suggesting, again, it's left over from the loading dock, which is, raising garage doors and stuff. There's just a lot of reverberations with a stark white, is what I'm saying.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So when we move forward to the next step, I just want to make sure, the way I interpreted your comments was it was paint. But what I'm hearing now is it's paint and color that are objectionable?
I think you're hearing comments about color.
Okay, so I just want to know that which one to address or both, and so I just want.
I think the issue is the paint, and then we kind of got sidetracked by the bright
Right, that's-
paint or whatever.
I agree.
I mean, at the heart of the issue, I think with the staff report, Lynn can speak to that, it was the paint, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we are asked to, uphold these standards of not damaging or destroying. And so, we do have to consider the building, and it's not listed on its own. It's not in the district. It is in the environs. It is also part of the downtown design guideline district. So we, in thinking through those things, we maybe got out of our lane a little bit with color, but.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Well, and this is Commissioner Johnson. I actually looked up the glazed white brick, and And there's many images online of it looking very lovely next to red brick. And so I don't have a heartache about the glazed white brick. It really is just the painting of the other brick. And just that downtown has such an eclectic mix from terracotta to Louis Sullivan tiles to, I mean, there's kind of a very nice palette of lots of different things downtown. So I think when you go to the ARC, you can hit upon something that will work.
Thank you.
So a motion.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we send the project to ARC for review.
I second that.
Thank you. So now we'll take a vote. Commissioner Johnson,
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Commissioner Meyer, aye.
Commissioner Ezell,
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Hawley,
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Klein,
Commissioner Klein, aye.
and Commissioner Haynes.
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
And Chair Coleman is an aye. So thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you all for your consideration. One note I would just make, I've been through this a few times with ARC, and it seems to work out. We would like to meet with ARC before the next scheduled HRC, so we can be back in a month without losing too much time.
That's right. Flexibility is the key.
And we're very flexible around here.
It's like an amazing project.
You just require 100% required.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
All right, moving along
Patrick, did you grab your flash drive?
Thank you.
to item 5, DR 2300412, 742 Connecticut.
Oh, right.
Mr. Coleman, while Avery pulls that up, out of curiosity, do you know if there are real lintels in the recessed brick? They can solve it structurally, but can they just knock out the brick and put in new windows? Or
I don't know. I have
is there
not
work?
analyzed it to see how far, like if it's recessed more than 2 inches, I would suspect there is, but if it's like an inch recess, I would suspect there's not, but I haven't looked that closely.
Solvable, I was just curious.
Yeah,
Never been inside the building.
yeah.
Top right corner, there you go.
Thanks. Okay. So this next item is DR-23-00412. In this item, or with this application, the applicant is requesting to demolish and construct a new accessory structure at 742 Connecticut Street. The subject property at 742 Connecticut Street contains the R.W. Spar House, which is a designated landmark in the Lawrence Register of Historic Places, and the proposed project requires a certificate of appropriateness review. This map shows the location of the listed property and its 250-foot environs buffer. The listed property contains a single-story cottage and a single-story detached garage, which is located in the northeast corner of the property. This is the front west elevation of the primary structure of the R.W. Spar House. The property was owned by R.W. Spar, who was one of the city's leading brick manufacturers and is responsible for producing most of the brick that was used to build early Lawrence. The property was designated as a landmark in the Lawrence Register of Historic Places back in 2014 for being a good example of the type of house that was constructed in Lawrence between 1864 and 1873, and for its association with R.W. Spar. This photograph shows the south elevation of the existing detached garage that the applicant is requesting to demolish. For demolition of existing structures, a structural analysis and a cost replacement analysis is requested to determine the extent of the damage to the structure. The applicant has supplied this documentation, which states that the structure has severe deterioration, including termite damage and rot. The foundation and concrete slab have significant settlement and cracking, and overall the building is structurally unsound. And now I'll walk through several photos of the existing structure that have been submitted by the applicant. So this is the west elevation of the structure, which faces the rear of the primary structure on site. Here you can see the chipping and cracking in the facade and the walls of the structure. And this is looking at the north side of the structure from the alley, and you can see again a significant crack on the upper or the right-hand side of that north wall. This is looking at the east wall adjacent to the alley. And then inside the structure, the photos document the same deterioration in the condition of the walls. And then standing inside the structure on the north end and looking south, you can see settlement and cracking in the foundation floor. And then again, inside the structure, looking from the south, you can see the same settlement and cracking in the foundation on the north end of the structure. The repair versus replacement cost analysis submitted states that it would be cost prohibitive to repair the existing structure due to the amount of work that would be required. Therefore, the applicant is proposing to construct a new one-car garage in place of the existing garage. This would be the south elevation of the proposed garage. The garage would have a shed-style roof, which would make this south elevation of the structure the highest end or portion of that structure. The structure would have a new concrete foundation, and the exterior of the structure would be clad with vertical board fiber cement siding. And then the roof would be finished with asphalt shingles. This would be the north elevation of the new garage. And then this would be the east elevation looking towards the structure from the alley. And then this would be the west elevation, which shows a pedestrian door and then a rough opening for a future window. And this would be the elevation that would be visible from the primary structure of the listed property. And then these are two renderings that were submitted by the applicant showing the southeast view of the structure from the alley on the top. And then on the bottom, a southwest view of the structure looking from the listed property. Staff did request additional info on the height of the existing and proposed structures for the site, which the applicant did provide. The height of the existing primary structure would be approximately 12 feet, 8 inches. The existing accessory structure would be approximately, is approximately 9 feet, 8 inches tall. And then the proposed garage would be approximately, or just over 11 feet tall. So the existing detached garage is included in the landmark designation for the R.W. Spar House, and demolition of the existing structure would remove historic material from the site and alter the character of the listed property. Based on the info that was submitted by the applicant, documenting the condition of the existing structure, demolition may be supportable if compatible replacement plans for a new detached garage are proposed. Staff is of the opinion that the proposed plans for the new garage would not be compatible given the size and scale of that new structure and the proposed vertical cement board siding that's proposed. So staff would recommend that the project be referred to the Architectural Review Committee for possible design refinement that would allow the project to better meet the standards and guidelines. And with that, I would be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Avery. I missed the 12-foot, 8-inch dimension. What was that of, the house?
Yeah, that would be the existing primary structure on site, would be 12 feet, 8 inches.
And the 11-foot proposed is to the
Would
highest
be
part of the...
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Thank you.
I probably provide a clarification.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going off of the Lawrence Development Code and how they determine the height of a building. So it'd be measured to the midpoint of the roof, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of all those structures.
Are there any other questions for staff? If not, we can hear from the applicant. No? Megan, are you the applicant?
I am the applicant. I just have a short little presentation that I'd like to share. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right, so again, as Avery showed, this is the west elevation of the primary structure house that's listed on the Lawrence Register of Historic Places. And this would be the southeast view of the existing garage. I just want to note also that the garage is at a lower elevation than the house. You see there's 2 steps coming down to the alley level, and the house is above that. And then if you go to the next slide, you can look at the proposed building and the house again. I just kind of outlined the shape of this shed roof addition on the side. It's very similar to the shed roof garage that we're proposing. So I just like to argue that the proposed design is compatible with the size, scale, and character of the property. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
I have a question.
Commissioner Klein?
When I was looking at the brick falling apart in the garage right now, do you have any idea if that is actually Spar's brick, the brick that Spar manufactured, or is that like 20th century brick? I mean, because the structural analysis and the photos and everything show that it appears to me that the garage is beyond repair. I mean, that it would be prohibitive to save it, but I was just curious about the bricks, the blocky bricks themselves. Do you know what I mean? If you have any idea of the age of those, and if the individual bricks are worth saving versus not necessarily using it to rebuild a new garage.
I don't know the I don't know the answer to that question, to be honest. I just know that from staff's report, they found, or if maybe it was from the historic listing of the structure, that the garage is later than the house. It's built in 19, It's just a
looks a whole lot later. Yeah, that's why I was just curious if the brick is 20th century or if it's, earlier, perhaps manufactured by Spar. His company. I don't think so, but I just want, it's something to think about, I guess is what I'm saying, as opposed to throwing the brick away.
Good question. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer.
Okay.
Looking at the photos, it looks to me like, and I don't know the dimensions of it, but it looks like a hollow structural clay tile that was popular in turn of the century to, I don't know, 20s or something. But that's typically unreinforced. Typically, the cells would align parallel with the striations on the face of the clay tile. So it's impossible to reinforce, really, because the cells go this way,
right?
And so and you can see all the crack. Yeah, it's really tough stuff to work with.
Right, sure.
I would peanut gallery comment. I'd be disappointed if a major manufacturer of masonry used that product in an exterior condition on their own house.
I'm just saying, if the brick is worth anything, save it for some completely different project. Like maybe give one brick to the Watkins Museum and say this came from Spar's house. I don't know.
Are there any other questions for the applicant or any discussion?
I guess one thing, when did this property go on the local?
2014 was when it was listed.
I think it was 2014. Yes, 2014.
Well, I hate to beat a dead horse. I said this at the beginning. I mean, it looks to me like this property owner has owned the property for like 20-some years. So in my opinion, it's a little disappointing that there wasn't maintenance done on the accessory structure in this time. I mean, I don't know what it looked like 20 years ago, and maybe it was just as bad, but I mean, I don't know that it was that bad, but it's unfortunate that it's now in the condition that it's in.
I have a question as to the design. Why change the design from what it is now? Is there a reason that it's needing to be larger, or because I think replacing it in kind, if it's past its ability to be repaired, then an acceptable solution would be to rebuild it in its current configuration. The shape of the roof, the height, the window arrangements, the door and everything. Can you speak to that?
I believe the owners wanted something that looked a little bit more modern. I've been working on this project for a while, and the original idea was much more, was a little bit more elaborate, I guess, and it was very, very modern. It's been simplified down to reach the correct budget, but they still want it to feel modern.
Are the owners planning on adding like shelving to that slant for storage and so forth? Is that part of the reason for the slant?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. And they might, I don't know if the owners are present. I can't see who's at City Hall.
Oh, yes. It looks like we have someone.
Megan, I'm here, I guess.
Okay.
I'll speak.
Maybe they can better answer that question. Yep.
Maybe I can help Megan out a little bit better.
Thank you.
No, you're doing a fantastic job, Megan. Speaking a bit about the property, so my husband and I own the property. He actually owned the property before I did. So we've been recently married, and so 20 years being single man versus now being married man, we're looking to improve the property. So that's why, this is one of the projects we have of in our own DIY. We felt the garage is a little bit out of our comfort zone of doing it ourselves, and so we've enlisted help on that, and Megan has been fantastic on that. So we are looking to match some of the things we like about the current house, and we want to improve it. Some of the things that aren't shown in that picture is the back half of the house does have a little bit more of that shedding or the roof. She showed it in the one at the front, but in the back of the house where the detached garage is, there's more of angled roofs that mimic something departing a little bit from the original kind of spar house that is that kind of 2-room old brick house. And we wanted to speak a little bit more to the back side of the house, since that's where the structure is. So we were kind of playing on lines with this back of the house, having a little bit more of that shed roof style, and that's where that came from. We do have plans about, maybe having a storage loft up above the garage doors. So that's, again, another place where we're taking that maybe a little bit extra space for storage, being it's only one car garage instead of a multiple car garage. I got lost in my own thoughts, but I think I hit some of those points that you had asked.
Yes.
Okay. Are there other questions that I might be able to offer insight on of how we got to where we are today?
Yep, I think you've addressed them all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
Dennis Brown of the LPA board again. The LPA agrees with the staff recommendation on this agenda item. This garage is pretty beat up, but it does have architectural style, and I think it lends itself well to the existing house. The low-hipped roof is a character-defining feature, and it's one I see repeated elsewhere around town very successfully in similar aged garages. One difficult part about the project is another character-defining feature, I would say, are the doors. And, as far as having a modern garage where people want to have a door opener and not get in and out of their car to shut and open the doors, those just aren't functional in today's modern life, even though they're, I feel, character-defining. I also agree a lot of this structure would be removed in a repair effort. Clay tile was not a successful building tool. I don't believe you can repair it at all. That wall would have to go. I think some of it's already been repaired by concrete block, which probably made the clay tile get worse. But I will say, I've seen several garages that were in similar shape, fixed up, a lot of new material, a lot of new framing, new sill plates, but very successfully in the way they turned out. One particularly in my neighborhood on Ohio Street, where Hernley Architects was the architect on that project. I will say that owner was able to use the tax credit system, which is not available to this owner because we don't have tax credits on local registered properties, so that's a disadvantage there. But that place on Ohio really turned out well and looks very much like an old historic structure, even though a lot of the framing and a lot of the siding is new. I think as far as the new garage proposal, one thing we really like about it is the same footprint. It's the same mass. They're not trying to tear down something little and make something huge. That's really appreciated. But the shed design, I don't think, we'll have some differences of opinion here, to me, doesn't lend itself as well or be compatible with the house as the current structure. If there was some repair structure that could, maybe it'd almost be down to saving the low-hipped roof, and pretty much everything underneath is new or reinforced, or failing that, a new proposal that essentially was a replica with a modern garage door. I think it'd be a successful project, and I think it's worth exploring at the ARC if the owner is willing to do that rather than receive a denial of the project, which staff is recommending.
Any additional public comment? Commissioner discussion?
Well, I personally agree with Megan about the shed, what is it called? Shed roof line, matching the house and working perfectly fine, as opposed to not being a character defining aspect of what currently exists. I mean, and again, I don't know what's possible for repairing a garage that's gotten to that degree of neglect, but it looks to me like it would be wiser to tear down the old garage, tear down the old concrete, lay down some new fresh concrete, so you're not having cracked concrete for the new car or old car, whatever, and build a new garage with the slanted roof on it that matches the house.
This is Commissioner Meyer. It's unfortunate the accessory structure is in the condition that it's in, but I would highly be in favor of sending it to ARC. I personally am not fond of the current design of the garage and would like to see that refined, as the staff report indicates, but that's just me.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Johnson. I'd agree with Commissioner Meyer.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would move that we send this application to our buddies at the ARC.
It's Commissioner Ezell, I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Ezell. We will take a roll call vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Meyer?
Commissioner Meyer, aye.
Commissioner Ezell?
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Hawley?
Commissioner Hawley, aye.
Commissioner Haynes?
Commissioner Haynes, aye.
Commissioner Klein,
Commissioner Klein, aye.
and Chair Coleman is an aye. Motion passes. We'll see you at the ARC meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask just one question real quick? Can I expect an email tomorrow to schedule that meeting?
Yes.
Because we would also probably like to get that onto the next HRC agenda. Okay, thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Like the ARC is going to be really busy.
Yeah.
Quit my full-time job.
Better go home and start thinking of ideas tonight.
All right, we are through our regular agenda items. There's a miscellaneous item here. Item E, to appoint Historic Resources Commissioner to Brick Streets and Sidewalks Multimodal Transportation Commission Subcommittee.
That's a mouthful.
Yes, tell us more.
BSSMTCS.
Thank you, Commissioners. One moment, I'm going to share my screen and have a brief presentation for you all. Okay, as mentioned, my screen go blank for y'all? It's strange.
You are, but it's blank.
One moment. Weird. Had it up the whole time y'all been meeting and it was working just fine, so.
Of course.
Let me see. Okay, try number 2. Okay, here we are again. As mentioned, the Multimodal Transportation Commission voted on developing a Brick Streets and Sidewalks subcommittee at their last meeting, and they asked that a member of HRC be on that subcommittee. So I'm here tonight to give a bit of background information and see who you might be interested in appointing to that role. The comprehensive plan, Plan 2040, identifies brick streets and sidewalks as a community resource and states the following goals: maintain, protect, and restore existing brick streets, sidewalks, and hitching posts within Lawrence, and formalize a review process for all public improvements to determine potential effects on preservation efforts. I recognize there's a long and complex history regarding the community and HRC's efforts to create a brick streets and sidewalks policy. And with that history, we've learned vital lessons that we can use in efforts moving forward, including the need to create a well-rounded group of stakeholders early in the process, i.e. a Brick Streets and Sidewalks subcommittee. The Brick Streets and Sidewalks policy should reflect the community's values and priorities, as well as have attainable and practicable implementation strategies for the City of Lawrence. The members of the subcommittee will help make this possible through sharing their diverse perspectives and values on character-defining infrastructure, lived experiences in proximity to brick streets and sidewalks, as well as how brick can impact accessibility and people with mobility challenges. The members of the subcommittee, which the Multimodal Transportation Commission voted to propose, are shown on the screen in front of you. And as mentioned previously and highlighted, they've asked that one member of the subcommittee represent HRC. To provide some additional context as to what would be asked of the person serving on this subcommittee, the plan is to have the policy drafted and adopted in the next 6 months. So it's not necessarily a long-term commitment. And I foresee the subcommittee meeting 3 or so times between now and July. Additionally, I'm proposing there be public engagement events and surveys as a means of engaging the community outside of the subcommittee if we end up having folks fighting for a chance to be involved on the Brick Streets and Sidewalks policy process. And with that brief presentation, I'd be happy to stand for any questions you may have and look forward to learning which of you I'll be working with here in the future.
Thank you, Cece. It seems that there was interest from one of the commissioners, but I don't remember who it was.
Don't everybody raise your hand at once.
Commissioner Klein. Am I misremembering that? Yeah, Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Klein, I'm not remembering, but reminding me of, I don't want to take us off in another direction about historic markers, that we're still waiting to hear about criteria for that. But it seems to me that historic markers would be connected to the easements that are next to the sidewalks next to the brick streets. And I don't know if that would be part of the subcommittee or not.
That's not currently within the scope of this subcommittee or the project MMTC is proposed. I also forgot to introduce myself at the beginning due to the chaos of sharing my screen. I'm a transportation planner in Lawrence, working for the city, and so that's sort of the lens we're going at with this, is multimodal transportation and connectivity.
Well, and this is Commissioner Johnson. I just got done with the Lawrence Loop Committee, so.
You've done your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have. And Commissioner Hawley and I are on the ARC. So, and then I believe Commissioner Meyer.
Don't look at me.
Okay, has served many times over.
No, my term concludes tonight.
And
so
I was
gonna say,
I'm no longer
her term
eligible, so.
Is this your second term of this session?
So.
Okay. So it's up to.
Process of elimination here.
Yes, Commissioner Ezell or Commissioner
Like
Klein.
Commissioner Haynes.
Or,
Oh, that's right.
Or Commissioner Haynes.
Commissioner Haynes.
He's been so
Commissioner
kind. It's very kind of Commissioner Ezell to point that out.
It was very kind.
Is that a yes, Commissioner Haynes?
Yeah, I'm willing to serve on this. I have to start serving on these sorts of committees eventually, so let's start now.
That's wonderful. I believe you'd have a good voice for it, and your historical background, your background in history and what you do every day would be a benefit to the committee.
I hope so.
Wonderful.
thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. Commissioner Haynes, I'll be in touch.
Thank
Chair
you.
Coleman, y'all would need to vote on that.
All right, we'll need to take a vote. I make a motion that Commissioner Haynes be appointed to the Brick Streets and Sidewalks Multimodal Transportation Commission Subcommittee.
Seconded.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawley. Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson, yes.
Commissioner Meyer.
Commissioner Meyer, aye.
Commissioner Ezell.
Commissioner Ezell, aye.
Commissioner Hawley.
Commissioner Holly, aye.
Commissioner Klein.
Commissioner Klein, aye.
Commissioner Haynes. Can you vote for yourself? I don't know.
Pause
Yes.
for dramatic effect. Commissioner Haynes, aye.
And Chair Coleman, aye. Thank you very much. Are there any other miscellaneous items? I see none on the agenda. Yes, Commissioner Klein.
Again, I wanted to ask, when are we going to be, two things. When are we going to work on the work plan and and discuss the work plan, since that's been hanging on since last July? And when are we going to hear about the criteria for historic markers so that people can propose historic markers for, and I'm talking the flat markers for residential properties, like the one that for Charles Langston that already exists and so forth. So I'd like to move on with, get going on those projects.
We
So when will that happen?
we are working with scheduling those things right now. We have a proposed rubric for historic markers that will be going back to the marker committee, hopefully in March. So we should have something to report on that in June. We are working on a time to come forward with enough public hearing availability time and commission time to start drafting that work plan. Unfortunately, the primary goal of the Historic Resources Commission has to be doing the design review applications and landmark applications that get submitted to the office for those monthly reviews that have that mandatory time requirement that you have to review those projects by. So we're looking at agenda times where that work plan can have the amount of time it deserves by the commission. As you noticed, this evening's agenda was rather large. We also have a large agenda right now for March. So one of the things that staff would like to discuss with the commission this evening would be, it's also time for training by the State Historic Preservation Office and also by our city attorney's office for COMA. So we need to look at what your preference is, whether or not you want to have extra long regular meetings, or would you like to look at scheduling special meetings for a work study for the work plan and then a training session by the State Historic Preservation Office. One of the things that they are going to come and talk to us on is making defensible decisions. Sometimes it's easy to stray into the categories of I like this or I don't like this, and there is no criterion L for like in any of the standards. Decisions have to be made based on those standards and guidelines. So making defensible decisions is a very important part of this commission's role in the community. So we will need to have that training sooner rather than later. Staff had thought we would have it possibly in May, but we can certainly look at other times that might work well for you. So this evening, we would be looking for feedback from you as to whether or not you would like long agendas and try to include the study session and the training in a regular scheduled meeting, or whether or not you would like to look at finding possible dates for special meetings.
I would like to have a separate study sessions for the work plan, separate from our regular meetings, so to give us time to sit around a table and to discuss freely about our priorities. And then I think for preservation planning, I think a similar thing. I think maybe having a separate meeting for that, because the preservation training doesn't need to be a public event, does it?
It would.
Or does?
Yes, it would be open to the public.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah.
All of these would be.
Both of these
Oh,
would be
okay.
open to the public.
Sure.
And how, what's the duration anticipated for the training?
The State Historic Preservation Office usually takes about an hour and a half to do their training. The city attorney's office is about 15 to 20 minutes. So it would be at least a couple hours for your training session, and then the work plan session would be determined on, how much discussion you have and how much time you want to allow for that.
Okay. Well, if I remember, when we were reviewing Chapter 22, we had quite a hard time finding a time that worked for all the commissioners to meet that was not during a commission meeting. And I'm worried that would happen again.
Well, we won't know until we find out.
And March looks like a full agenda.
March is a full agenda.
So, but if we do schedule it for May and then we have another full agenda, then what happens? It gets pushed a month?
What?
Or it could keep getting pushed?
Yes.
Yes.
I would rather not have the work plan get pushed to July when I first proposed having it off of our duties from the Chapter 22 ordinance.
I think your training has to get done.
Yes.
That's not
Sure.
a pushbackable item too far.
Well, this is Commissioner Johnson. I think we need a study session. I think both the work plan and the training need to be separate from a regular meeting, and we should just try to find a time. It may be, if it's something that could be almost like a retreat, and we do the training and the work plan together and we have lunch and just knock it out. But
It will be a public meeting.
yeah, you know, if the public want to come and spend the day with us, great. If not, that's okay.
Other thoughts? I mean, I'd prefer to work it into the May meeting, but I don't want the May meeting to be 3 hours long.
4 hours long.
Or 4.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, I mean, quite frankly, I would also prefer a separate study session that doesn't necessarily have to be in the evening, because I'm not real alert as time goes on. This is my nap time right now. So, I would like to have, you know, an earlier time for a separate study session.
We might be able to start at 5, but we do have full-time employed commissioners with.
Well, and I don't know about weekends, if weekends are touchable or not.
Well, I believe Lynn's can send out a doodle poll to identify some times. I can help narrow it down.
Okay. One last miscellaneous item. As we know, this is my last hurrah, my last meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer,
They've
for
done
your service.
3.5 terms of duty, which I sat here and realized is 20% of my life I've been on the Historic Resources Commission. I don't know what that says about my life or that I have nothing else going on, but that's it. That's what I've done. So I've appreciated being with all of you. And I don't know who you lovely individuals are who have sat through what has to be the longest meeting in the last 4.5 years I've been on this commission probably. But you've all kept your eyes open and it's laudable. So thank you very much for your patience.
I think they're getting credit.
Well, whatever
Are
it
you here
is.
for a class? Yes.
What class are you here for?
Preservation planning.
Okay, great.
There you go.
Yeah. Well,
Well, thank you.
all right, thank you. That's all I had.
If there are no other items, then we're adjourned.
Right.
Yes, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your service.
I mean, gold watch.
Yes.
Thank you for helping us with defensible art.
What committee's next for you?
What happens?
I can.